In this session, let us discuss about spinal nerves and also autonomic nervous system. Spinal nerves, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. They are arranged in 5 groups. Cervical nerves are 8 pairs in the neck region. Thoracic nerves 12 pairs in the thoracic region. Behind the thoracic there are 5 pairs of lumbar nerves, and behind lumbar there are 5 pairs of sacral nerves, and there is 1 pair of coccygeal nerve behind the sacral. Thus there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. They leave the spinal cord through intervertebral foramina. All the spinal nerves are mixed nerves having sensory and motor branches. The 3 to 4 branches will be there. The ventral branches of spinal nerves form plexus by joining at some places. Thus, they form cervical plexus, brachial plexus, lumbar plexus, sacral plexus, and coccygeal plexus. Cervical plexus is formed by joining first 4 cranial nerves and a phrenic nerve. It supplies nerve fibers to neck region and also to the diaphragm. And 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th cervical nerves and also first thoracic nerve form brachial plexus, which supply nerve fibers to chest region and also arms. The third plexus is lumbar plexus, is formed by the first 4 lumbar nerves, which supply nerve fibers to legs. And the fourth plexus is sacral plexus, which is formed by a branch of 4th lumbar nerve and 5th lumbar nerve and first 4 sacral nerves. It supplies nerve fibers to hip joint and a part of the pelvis. Coccygeal plexus is formed by coccygeal nerve along with 4th and 5th sacral nerve fibers. It supplies nerve fibers to skin and parts of the pelvis. That is about the spinal nerves. So we finished 12 pairs of cranial nerves in the last session, and we finished 31 pairs of spinal nerves in this session. Now pass on to the autonomic nervous system. There are 2 components called sympathetic and parasympathetic, which are antagonistic to each other. Coming to sympathetic nervous system, a chain of 21 sympathetic ganglia on either side of the spinal cord is seen. Preganglionic sympathetic nerve fibers from thoracic and lumbar area of the spinal cord. These nerves outflow. That is why this system is also called thoracolumbar outflow. These fibers synapse with the neurons of the sympathetic ganglia, and some fibers may not synapse with the sympathetic ganglia. The postganglionic fibers from the ganglia terminate on the visceral organs, on the viscera, internal organs. Some preganglionic fibers which do not form the synapse, they pass through the sympathetic chain without synapse and then join with some collateral ganglia, which are celiac ganglia, anterior mesenteric ganglia, and posterior mesenteric ganglia, which supply nerve fibers to the digestive system and urinogenital system. And now coming to the parasympathetic nervous system, it consists of preganglionic parasympathetic fibers and ganglia and postganglionic parasympathetic fibers. They exit along the 3rd, 7th, 9th, 10th cranial nerves and also 2nd, 3rd, 4th sacral nerves. That is why it is called craniosacral outflow. This is thoracolumbar outflow, whereas this is craniosacral outflow. parasympathetic ganglia do not form any chain like in sympathetic system. Like sympathetic ganglia, it forms chain in sympathetic, whereas here no chain formation. Instead, they lie nearer to the visceral organs. So, pre-ganglionic fibers, parasympathetic fibers are long, whereas preganglionic sympathetic fibers are short. And here postganglionic nerve fibers are short, whereas postganglionic nerve fibers are long in sympathetic system. So, the postganglionic fibers arise from this ganglia and they supply to the visceral organs. The neurotransmitters in both sympathetic and parasympathetic acetylcholine is common. But in sympathetic nervous system, adrenaline and noradrenaline may also be released, which have opposite effect of the acetylcholine. During some furious situations, it may be released. Autonomous nervous system control and coordinate the activities of visceral organs because they are supplied to the visceral organs. The sympathetic and parasympathetic systems work against each other. Like if you take about sweat glands, the sympathetic nerves stimulate the perspiration, and next here there is no effect of the parasympathetic nerves. And the iris muscles of the eye, they dilate the pupil in case of sympathetic influence, whereas it constricts the pupil parasympathetic influence. And next, erector pili, erection of the hair takes place by the sympathetic effect, whereas there is no effect of parasympathetic. And digestive tract, it slows down the peristalsis movement of the digestive tract sympathetic system, whereas parasympathetic system will accelerate the peristaltic movements of the digestive tract. Here, the inhibition of the secretion of the salivary glands takes place by the sympathetic system, whereas parasympathetic stimulates the secretion of the salivary juice by the salivary glands. The gastric gland secretion also will be inhibited by the sympathetic, and pancreas inhibition secretion will be inhibited by the sympathetic, whereas parasympathetic stimulates both the secretions of the gastric glands and also the pancreas. And here intestinal gland secretion also will be decreased, and liver also influenced to secrete less bile and increase in the release of the sugar, whereas parasympathetic system promotes the bile secretion and also it promotes the storage of the glycogen. Coming to the bronchial muscles, the sympathetic system widens the air passage to facilitate the breathing, whereas it narrows the air passage, hindering breathing. And sympathetic quickens the heartbeat, it raises the heartbeat. Heartbeat will be raised, whereas it decreases the heartbeat. Parasympathetic will decrease the heartbeat when it is raised by the sympathetic. And urinary bladder will be relaxed by the sympathetic system, it will be contracted by the parasympathetic system. So, this is about the autonomic nervous system, where the sympathetic and parasympathetic will act in antagonistic manner. Thanks for